The 1970s. A dynamic decade of political, social, and cultural changes all across the world. But the real question is, what were them horror movies hitting for? So come on with your boy Tech, and we're gonna take a deep dive into the decades of horror, starting with the 1970s. So without further ado, let's get into it. What is going on, Spooky Gang? I hope y'all are having just a blessed day. And for anybody who's seeing this video and you're new to the channel, go ahead and subscribe to the kid. Here at Terror of Tech, it's all about the horror community, and that's what I upload for, just for you guys, just to spread this good old horror content. Hey, we're all getting our spooky on, so like I said, if you like what you see here, go ahead, join the Spooky Gang, hit that subscribe button, like the video, and before we even get into the topic of the video, y'all go ahead, drop down below, what do you think of 70s horror movies? You know, like, what are some of your favorite ones from that decade? A lot of the years in the 70s have a lot of pretty solid movies, so it's really going to be interesting to see what you all say. So like I said, drop that down below. We're on the road to 1K subs. We're almost halfway there, so we're getting close to 500 subs, and we'll really be able to make some magic happen starting then. So if you haven't already, like I said, subscribe, and we're going to go ahead and jump into this video. So like the title of the video says, we're talking about the decades of horror, specifically about the 1970s. This is a new segment that I created just so we could take a deeper dive into the history of horror and everything that horror has provided us over the years. And, you know, and then we can really analyze, you know, cultural changes and the way horror movies progressed or regressed in some aspects. Obviously, we're starting out with the 1970s, and then, you know, next time we'll jump into the 80s, then the 90s, 2000s, and so on and so forth. So this is something I really look forward to, especially as we get a little closer to some more modern movies. Now, don't get me wrong, I love a lot of older movies, but there are still a good amount out there that I haven't seen. So, and I'm pretty sure there's a lot that you all haven't seen either. So, and that's where a deep dive like this will really be beneficial to us all. So when we're thinking about 1970, what was going on in 1970 as far as horror? It almost seems like in the year 1970, just really honestly, the first couple of years of the 70s was really rinse and repeat of a lot of the older classic like Universal horror movies that, you know, we've all come to know and love. So the Dracula movies, the Frankenstein movies, there's just so many different iterations of those same movies. Even if they don't necessarily have the title Dracula or Frankenstein in it, it's always, you can just tell by the cover of the poster that it's something to do with a vampire, and the vampire always looks exactly like how, you know, Bram Stoker's Dracula, or, you know, the classic Dracula that you think of by Bela Lugosi. That's essentially what every single vampire looks like. And then similarly, Frankenstein's monster, all of them have that big square head, and just, I don't know. And so it just seems like there were a million either sequels or, like I said, iterations of pretty much the same thing over and over. So like movies out there like I Drink Your Blood, The Horror of Frankenstein, Count Dracula, Scars of Dracula, like it's all pretty much the same thing. So 1970, like I said, it was really rinse and repeat of pretty much the same subgenre of horror. And then as we move into 1971, you still really honestly get a good bit of the same movies. You start to see a little bit of a switch into more movies that are about like witches and like demonic things and exorcisms and things of that nature. But of course, still with, you know, your zombies, your vampires, and Blood of Satan's Claw and Devil Nightmare. Like, I mean, these aren't movies that I really particularly heard of before I started doing the research for this movie. But once again, like I said, it's a lot of the same in the beginning years of the 70s, coming off the 60s. Moving on to 1972, still once again a lot of the same stuff, but then you get, you know, a movie like The Last House on the Left, and, you know, a couple of other movies. But like I said, still rinse and repeat. And then honestly, it wasn't really until 1973 where we really started getting those banger horror movies that we love from the 70s. So starting out with a movie like The Exorcist that came out in 73, without any form of debate, The Exorcist is easily a top 5 horror movie of all time. Where in that top 5 does it fall? You know, it's all personal preference, but, you know, from a objective standpoint, I don't really see how anybody can argue that there are 5 other movies that are better than The Exorcist within the horror genre. So The Exorcist definitely left its mark. It's also probably one of the scariest movies of all time. The practical effects that they used for that period of time were just remarkable. They were very good. The Exorcist spawned so many different movies, not only its own sequels within its franchise, but a lot of movies wanted to be The Exorcist after that. They wanted to be The Exorcist, but you can never out exorcist The Exorcist because it did almost every single aspect of what you need a movie to do, but perfectly. Now, the movie, low key, I will admit, the movie is long as hell, and that's probably one of its biggest flaws. But if anything, The Exorcist is just a banger. Everybody's aware, everybody knows it. And then there's also movies like The Wicker Man that came out in that year, and also The Crazies. For people who are familiar with The Crazies, I know I've mentioned the remake that came out in 2010. I mentioned that in a video before, but this is the original. Essentially, airplane crashes and a toxic virus essentially enters or like mutates and affects the water supply, and people just essentially have to avoid this huge outbreak and basically turning people into like zombies, not your traditional zombies. But it's a really good movie. That movie, then you really start to see horror really starting to hit its stride in the 70s. So now moving on to 1974, that's when you have the amazing Black Christmas, and you have a movie like The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Both movies are great. I love both of them. Black Christmas, for some reason, holds a special place in my heart. For it to be a 70s movie and still feel as dreary and as creepy and unsettling as it feels, and then Billy talking to Olivia Hussey over the phone, just everything about it. I love the setting. I love the setting of it. I love how it's Christmas time, and primarily it's all in that sorority house, or like their little dorm house, or whatever you want to call it. It's primarily there, and just the Christmas music playing in the background. And then there's so many particular scenes where it's just so quiet in the house, especially after people start disappearing and things of that nature. Just really great movie, really great atmosphere. And then you have a movie like The Texas Chainsaw, which is based off the real life killer Ed Gein. Now it's loosely based off of it, but still is based off of it. It definitely made its impact in the horror genre. It was probably the first successful slasher movie. Once again, really great movie. And what makes this movie great in contrast to a movie like Black Christmas is this movie had this real documentary feel. Like it felt like you were just watching events happen, as opposed to this is a movie. And that really hits home, especially like with when he's like attacking them. So when he takes like the mallet and crushes them over the head, and then you just hear that real authentic sound of it just sounding like a mallet hitting a human skull and it crushing. So the impact of like that soundboard or the soundscape was just really good. Like I said, the way with the way it's shot and the documentary feel adds to it too. And then Leatherface obviously is one of the big four horror villains. So just all together, 1974 just had nothing but bangers all around. Then we move into 1975, and 1975 also had some bangers of its own. The most notable of all the horror movies and dang near movies in general from 1975, other than my boy Bruce Lee and Enter the Dragon, but would be Jaws. Jaws impacted everybody, pretty much the entire world. I can't name anybody that now when they go swimming, specifically in the ocean, they're not thinking about what's underneath them and if a shark is going to come get them, things of that nature. Just from that aspect alone, we're not even talking about just horror, just culturally, everybody was then now afraid to go into the water. So just that impact alone makes Jaws. Then you have movies like Deep Red, which is directed by Argento, and it's also a giallo film. And for people who are not familiar with giallo films, they're essentially it's a subgenre of Italian horror that was created that originated in like the 1960s and 70s. They're all Italian murder mystery suspenseful type movies. So Argento was brilliant in that aspect in terms of film directing and filmmaking. So Deep Red is definitely a good movie, and it follows a pianist who witnesses a murder, and now he's all caught up in this murder mystery and this complex investigation surrounding it. So solid movie. Like I said, it's Italian horror. And if you haven't seen anything like that, then I would definitely recommend to check it out. Then 1976 comes around and you have movies like Carrie, The Omen, The Town That Dreaded Sundown. Now everybody's familiar with The Omen. Omen, you know, talking about Damien being the Antichrist and everything surrounding that. Carrie, the girl with telekinetic powers, and then, you know, the aspect of her religious mother and all of that good stuff. Both really good movies in their own right. And then The Town That Dreaded Sundown is actually based on the real life series of murders that happened in Texarkana in like the 1940s. That's what The Town of Dreaded Sundown is based on. So a lot of those events, not exactly the same as the movies, because, you know, movies are always going to have their theatrics and stuff like that. But from the aspect of just the general story, yeah, a lot of that stuff happened that you will see in that movie. So if you're a person who really fears like that true crime feel of movies and things of that nature, or like that it's based on a true story, then this will probably be a movie for you. Then here comes 1977, and you have a movie like Suspiria. Suspiria also is an Argento film. Similarly, same concept. It's about an American ballet student, and she transfers to this like prestigious dance academy, only to find out that there's some involvement with like supernatural witches. And Argento is one of the best horror directors ever. So Suspiria and Deep Red are definitely probably one of his top 2 bangers. So once again, that's definitely a movie you should watch. And then they had a movie like and then there's Eraserhead, not by Argento, but still another movie that came out in 77. So that's solid as well, and I'm pretty positive that one's on HBO Max, so you can check it out there. But then my favorite year rolls around, and we all know why. 1978 came around, and my boy John Carpenter made the greatest horror movie of all time. I don't care what y'all talking about, but that bad boy right there. Hey, listen. Halloween changed the way that we feel about October and Halloween altogether, honestly. Something about the way Halloween makes you feel. Like, there's nothing better than watching Halloween on Halloween night. Like, it almost feels like a magical feeling, especially like when you're watching it and then you get to the end where Loomis shoots Michael off the balcony, and then he turns around and talks to Laurie, and Laurie's like, "Was it the boogeyman?" And he's like, "As a matter of fact, it was." You go back and you see Michael's gone. Halloween theme kicks in. Like, it's just, there's nothing better than that. And then you just hear Michael's breathing as they do different camera shots of basically nothing, just showing that he's like gone, but you still hear the breathing. Like, I mean, I love that. And then you double that up with a movie like Halloween 2 on Halloween night. Y'all better stop playing. But other than Halloween, there still was Dawn of the Dead, and then there's Invasion of the Body Snatchers, another John Carpenter film. But Dawn of the Dead also is Dawn of the Dead for sure is also a banger. It's honestly, you know, between that and its remake, both of them are actually really good. And I'll probably say that they are my favorite of the zombie type movies. So you really can't go wrong there. And then that brings us to 1979, also filled with some bangers. So in this year, you have Alien, you have Phantasm, you have Amityville Horror, you have When a Stranger Calls. A lot of y'all are familiar with a lot of those movies, and I've mentioned those before. But even with a movie like When a Stranger Calls, the original, I know there's been one remake for sure. I want to say there might have been one more, but I could be wrong. Anyway. A movie like When a Stranger Calls, for people who are, like I said, more a fan of the real life horror, something that feels more realistic and less supernatural and science fiction like, then When a Stranger Calls is a perfect movie for you. It's about a girl who's, you know, babysitting these kids, and then obviously you have to deal with like a stalker / intruder. So there's that whole dynamic, and, you know, and all of us growing up, you know, as kids, parents tell you, "Oh, don't answer the phone, don't answer the door, don't do all this," and just, so basically the movie is just this whole back and forth, and you just watch her struggle with dealing with the intruder or the stranger. So, no, really good movie, and a great way to cap off some of the best movies of 1979. So yeah, that's all I got for y'all, Spooky Gang. Like I said previously, comment down below what are some of your favorite 70s horror films, or even also what is your favorite year in the 70s for horror movies. All of them, especially after like 1973. have their own unique properties. Like I said, the beginning ones all were like rinse and repeat of the Universal classics. Why was it like that? I have no idea. I remember I was just talking to my mom yesterday about it, and she talked about how when she was growing up, there were so many different vampire films and stuff like that. And, you know, I love vampires. So it's dope that a lot of that stuff was going on, but this is like, dang, rinse and repeat of the same stuff. So kind of wild. But yeah, like I said, y'all comment that down below. Subscribe to the kid. Listen, Spooky Gang is growing. I love and appreciate all of the comments and all of the support that you guys are sending towards the channel, man. It means the world to me. Like I said, at the end of the day, like I told you, we're all horror fans, and I just want to bring y'all the best horror content that I can. So if y'all like this video and y'all want to see me continue with the decade, so moving on to the 80s and the 90s, the 2000s, and so on and so forth, y'all make sure y'all like the video, subscribe if you haven't, and yeah, that's all I got for you. So y'all stay blessed and stay safe, and most importantly, y'all stay spooky.